Good evening. It being 7 o'clock, I'm going to open the November 12th, 2024 Conservation Commission meeting agenda. First thing I want to announce is that this meeting is being recorded by Area 58 and can be viewed on YouTube. I'm also going to announce that I've made an addition to the agenda, which I'm placing under discussions regarding 17 Lake Street. We have members present, Mr. Lane, Ellen Diaz, Paul Doucette, and Caitlin. First order of business is a hearing for 285 Holmes Street, but I'm going to take some other stuff out of order, and I just want to see who's here for what. 265. That's going to be fairly quick. What I'd like to do is probably take you out of order unless you want to sit for the next hour. Okay. Do we have his order of conditions? Special order of conditions? This is... We'll need that, and then we'll need 285. That would be this. I'm gonna give that to you in one hand. I can get it down. Okay, this is 265 Montponce Street. This is the Stormwater Management Order of Conditions and Special Order of Conditions. Did everyone get a chance to read these? Ed? Paul? Okay. It's very similar to the order of conditions we use for 265. There are some changes which we added, and the most important change was that any, which is J, out of the alphabetical process, is that any changes to the plan, including but not limited to changes in elevations, impervious surfaces, resulting in any increase in drainage, the applicant shall notify the Stormwater Authority, its agents or representatives in writing. The Stormwater Authority, its agents or representatives, shall determine if the change constitutes a significant change to require a new hearing. And the applicants have agreed to that. I am going to be looking for a motion to approve the special order of conditions and the order of conditions for 265 Montponce Street.
I put a motion that we approve 265 Montponce Street with the special order of conditions.
And I'm looking for a second.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to go to a vote. Ed?
Yes.
Alan, yes?
Paul,
Yes. Okay. Okay, why don't you pop that right back in the front folder? And
We're
could
all
I
set?
Could I have 285?
Yes.
Okay. You're all set, thank you. I'm gonna lose my agenda already.
How can you lose it already?
I lose my, this agenda, okay. The next order of business is we have a public hearing for 285 Holmes Street. This is regarding a stormwater management hearing. I'm going to read the notice into the record. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing conducted by the Halifax Conservation Commission with reference to Chapter 146 of the Town of Halifax Stormwater Management Bylaw on Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, at 7 p.m. at the Halifax Town Hall to consider the stormwater management permit filed August 14th, 2024 by Prince Global Thai LLP of Boston, Mass. on behalf of the applicant, Liddell Development LLC of Killington, Vermont. The applicant is seeking to change the use of this industrial zone property to light manufacturing and minor stormwater management permit at the property located at 285 Holmes Street, shown on Assessors Map 22, Lot 7. Having read the record, the meeting notice, I'm going to look for a motion to open the hearing.
So motion that we open the hearing.
Get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. The applicant, I'm going to ask that the applicant's representative come to the mic. I just want to make a couple announcements on this meeting. We're going to try to keep this down to about 1 hour, unless we can do it sooner. Just want everybody to know the commission is aware of some of the history on the property as far as the flooding, the tree removal, topsoil removal. It's also been brought to the commission's attention about the owner's non-compliance with previous site plans. So I want to keep all the discussion based on this application. There's been some talk about the work that was done in 2019. That was prior to the inception of this particular bylaw. So we're going to keep everything from 2021 forward. Representative.
Good evening, my name is Ann Sobolewski. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Liddell Development LLC. So this property, 285 Home Street, some complaints were made back in March about stormwater runoff, and I appeared before the Conservation Commission then to inform them that we would put in place some erosion and sedimentation controls that were temporary and would retain an engineer to design a system to address the problem. So we did that and went back to the commission again in March to inform them that the temporary controls were installed, and they have been installed. They've been in place since that point in time. We retained an engineer who designed this stormwater management system, which we submitted to the board in August for approval. This system as designed, and I'll let our engineer, Mr. Pavlik, provide more information about the design, but the system as designed takes into consideration the condition of the property prior to any work occurring on it. So the original rates of runoff that are being used to compute the stormwater management for this system are not the runoff from the property as it currently exists, but are the runoff from the property before any trees were removed, before anything was removed, right? So as designed, this system will result in there being less water runoff from this property than there was before any of that activity. That's the first point I want to make. We've designed the system. The Commission's review engineer reviewed it. He had comments. Our engineer communicated with him about those, made some changes. We submitted revised plans that are dated September 25th to the Commission on October 7th. Those plans were also reviewed by the Commission's review engineer, who agreed that the system was going to result in there being less runoff to Home Street than prior to any activity occurring on the property. And that's in his letter to the Commission of October 8th. But now I will let Jim describe the system itself.
Just identify yourself for the record.
Sure. Jim Pavlik with Fuss and O'Neill. And is it possible we can flip through the plans? If we
Correct.
could go up to the screen?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to work it, so. Caitlin, I don't know if you have any experience. There is a remote there, but
So,
I'm a little challenged there.
should we just use this one?
They were touching it the last time.
Yeah, these I know will flip
All
through.
right, I'll do it. You tell me.
Okay.
Technology. And I'm blind in my eye, but
I feel like I'm gonna be singing karaoke.
yes.
with-
This which one?
Yeah, so this is, that's the erosion sediment control plan, but just in generalities, I wanted to go through the existing conditions on the site and what we're proposing and talk about the proposed drainage system. But, the site is 2.5 acres. Holmes Street is on the left side. It's kind of a upside down L-shaped lot, if you will. And you have the MBTA tracks on to the north of the property, and residential properties and wooded areas to the south and east. And, so there's an existing 6,000 some odd square foot building on the site, and it's all a large gravel area currently surrounding the site. And what we did in analyzing the runoff conditions was to treat, in our calculations, we looked at the site before it had been cleared back in around 2021. And so that back portion of the site was mostly wooded at that point. And so we did our runoff analysis under existing conditions based on that wooded condition with gravel around the building. And that leads to a conservative approach in terms of what we're doing to design the proposed system. And what we're showing there is the two infiltration basins. Sure, you can go to the next sheet. One more. Okay, so this shows two infiltration basins that we're proposing to capture the runoff. So there's one to the north and one to the south of the building. And they're generally located at the low points of the site, which is towards Holmes Street. And again, these basins were sized based on the town's regulations, where we're required to fully capture a 10-year storm with no off-site runoff from the two basins. So all runoff would be captured in the two basins up to a 10-year storm. And in larger storms, there would be some runoff from what we're calling infiltration basin 1 on the south side of the building. And that would run off to Holmes Street through an overflow spillway. And again, we've sized the basins based on that analysis of existing conditions versus the current conditions. And the analysis shows that there's reductions in runoff for both the 25-year storm and the 100-year storm, which is the maximum design storm that we look at. So just to put that into perspective, those are a 100-year storm is a catastrophic event, a large hurricane like we've seen in Florida and North Carolina recently. It's something that hasn't occurred in Massachusetts since I think the 1950s. It's a very rare occurrence in this area. So that I'm just trying to give you some perspective on the types of storms. We have a number of storms that are in the 2 to 10 to 25-year range, but there has not been an occurrence of a 100-year storm event in this area for many, many years, so it's a very rare occurrence. So again, just to summarize, we've looked at the conditions from prior to the tree clearing. We're analyzing those existing conditions and comparing it to what we're doing, what we're providing for this post-development condition, and we're going to be fully capturing all runoff up to the 10-year storm event with no runoff to Holmes Street, and in larger storms there would be small amounts of runoff towards Holmes Street.
Right, I think like it was 91%.
Just make sure that you go to the mic so that we have someone separate that's recording this.
I think, Jim, it was 91% of all the runoff for a 25-year storm is captured.
Correct.
Right, so it's 9% of the runoff.
That's pretty much it regarding the stormwater.
Okay. And I just wanted to reiterate, this is a system that was designed to solve a problem. Complaints were made, That's the reason why we retained the engineer to address the situation, to come up with something that would in fact solve the problem and prevent there from being a unreasonable runoff situation from this property. There's no pavement proposed on the site, also, I wanted to make a note of that. It's just the stormwater system.
Okay, Mr. Pavlik, I'm gonna ask you to come back up. Before I get some comments from our review engineer, a couple of us did a site visit the other day. You've addressed some of the concerns on the site visit. One of those was the basin that overflows onto Home Street, which would be on the easterly side on Nether Road, where you've got, in your 100-year storm, you got some potential runoff onto Home Street, which the Highway Department does not want. That's just one of the things, and we'll address them each time. There was some deficiencies on the plan I think you're going to address. One of the points that you made was that you did a pre-development analysis based on the tree coverage that was there. And then you did a post-development, which is what you're proposing. So is it a correct assumption that your pre-development wooded area was about 93,000 square feet with about 16,092 square feet of gravel? These are based on some of the calculations, and I verified them. And your post-development is 9,346 square feet of wooded area. So you've eliminated, 80 some odd thousand square feet of wooded area. And now you have 79,337 square feet of gravel. It was new to me when you did these calculations that you'd base that on the wooded area, which means that those trees, shrubs, and underbrush, grass would have captured some of the runoff that would have gone, that went out into Route 36. Because I think we hopefully we can all agree that prior to this project, there was no major flooding on Route 36. So if you did your pre-development analysis on a wooded area, I'm not sure that these numbers are 100% correct, but I'm not a numbers guy. So maybe you can explain if these numbers are wrong, and based on, and I understand that you do your stormwater analysis based on science and how you're supposed to do it. But in this particular case, we don't have the woods, the grass, and the rest of the stuff to absorb that water. I mean, originally you had 16,000 square feet of impervious surface that went out into Route 36, and now you got almost 80,000. So, just hold on, okay. So, I just want to go over the rest of this. So that's, I think, part of what the commission is going to have to really look at, and we'll count on our review to help us with that. During our inspection last week, we found that the 2 catch basins or the 3 catch basins were entirely full, and you did address that. I'm not sure that the way you addressed it is going to be sufficient, where we don't know when they were installed. We don't know how they were installed. Part of our regulations do require that prior to the installation of the basins, there's an inspection. We don't know that the invert elevations currently in the existing basins are going to work with your proposed numbers. So we're going to have to address that. And the latest issue is the fact that even with a 100-year storm, they don't want any water under Route 36. So, having said that, I'm just going to turn it over to Pat Brennan, our review engineer, and then we're going to kind of query him on how you got your numbers, and should they be based on that wooded area versus the unwooded area. Okay? Good. Go ahead. All right, go ahead. Just identify yourself again, please.
Sure, Ann Sobolewski for the applicant. So just to be clear, when he's saying he's using the pre-development numbers, that's what he's using for the existing conditions, so that by making it less than that, what we're doing is we're ensuring that there's less runoff than there would have been to the property before anybody did any clearing. It's the base number.
Now, let's just clarify one thing. Existing conditions are existing conditions. You base your numbers on a pre-development, which would have been with the wooded area. If I'm wrong, just tell me that I'm wrong.
If I can state it in
Yeah.
my own words,
Sure,
because
go
I'm
ahead.
not quite
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get confused.
Yeah.
I'll just say it in my own words. We looked at existing conditions being prior to the woods being cleared in, which I understand was around 2021.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I'm not
Good.
sure of the exact time.
That's-
but it
that's close
was-
enough.
It was not the current condition, so that we're looking at a situation before the tree clearing was done, which would have resulted in less runoff to Home Street. So that is correct.
Mhm.
And what it means is, anytime we're doing drainage analysis, we have to look at what the existing rates and volumes of runoff are. And if you have a lower number to start with, it means you have more runoff to control under the post-developed condition. So that's what we've done. We started out looking at it conservatively, saying, okay, let's not just look at existing conditions as it is right now, where it's all gravel. Let's look at it at the time, 3-4 years ago, when it was wooded, when there would have been less runoff. So,
Okay, so you've answered my question. So the existing conditions, and I'm gonna sort of defer that for Pat, and then I'll probably get you back up. The existing conditions as they stand, are your stormwater numbers based on that surface, which is pretty much impervious?
yeah, the post condition, we're treating it as a gravel surface, and it has a very high curve number, runoff curve number, which is what gets put into the, it's not totally impervious, but it's a very high runoff curve number, almost like pavement.
Correct. So you're saying that your numbers for the sizing of the basins, and the basins, I mean, they're gigantic. I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that the amount of runoff that's there today is going to be captured. It appears to me that the retention basin is big enough. I just don't see how, with the amount of catch basins that you have there, quite honestly, that you're going to capture, 300 feet of runoff in a gravel area. But we'll defer that. What I'd like to do, does any board members have any questions at this point where we can?
Well, I just have like more of a statement to make. I don't think you can make a calculation of pre-existing conditions when you weren't out there to inspect it, or anyone, the engineers or weren't there. They can't make pre-existing calculations on something they really never checked out. So I think the pre-existing conditions is, I hate to use the words guessing game, but it's not.
I'm gonna call it hocus pocus.
Yeah,
And hocus pocus is
Well, it's the
how they work drainage, but they have a scientific approach. Most of the time it works, sometimes it doesn't. Anything else, Paul? So I just want to get some comments from Pat Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Pat Brennan, PGB Engineering. As was noted, I reviewed the original set of plans that they submitted, sent you guys a letter back in September. The revised plans came in, and I submitted another letter October 8th. I'll just go through quickly what my comments were, how they've been addressed, and then I'll get into a little bit about what you guys were just discussing to try to explain that a little bit more. I'm gonna go to the microphone over there.
That's fine.
So, on the original set of plans, they had, there was a proposed catch basin right here. which is still there. And they were gonna pipe it.
Yeah, you touched it, so.
They had it shown being piped into an existing catch basin that's out there, which we don't want, because when you have flow through like that, it stirs up the sediments in the second catch basin. So they've corrected that by piping that proposed catch basin straight into the infiltration basin with a sediment forebay in the infiltration basin. Because that was my second comment, was that they needed additional pre-treatment, which is the deep sumps in the existing and proposed catch basins, a hood on the outlets from those basins, and now the sediment forebay, which provides additional pre-treatment, especially since this is a gravel surface, because you're gonna have a lot more sediment in this runoff than you would from a paved surface, because it's picking it up, from the gravel. So they addressed that as well with the sediment forebays. I was a little concerned about the topography out by Home Street, and I asked them to add some additional spot elevations so we can be sure that the runoff, because one of the things that happens is the runoff from basin number 2, which is the northerly basin, if that overflows, it's gonna flow across the parking lot and end up in basin number 1. The reason that's doing that is that there's a little bit of a hump at the entrance coming in, which I asked them to show some spot rigs there to make sure that there was actually a hump there, so that anything leaving this basin wasn't going to Home Street, but was gonna go to the second basin. So they did show those additional spot grades to show that. I had a concern about the storage volume. They have a dry well out here for the roof runoff from the building that is gonna be, that's gonna take the runoff from the building before it discharges into that northerly basin. They just didn't have that modeled correctly. They straightened that out. One of the issues, and I know that Mr. Pavlik had mentioned this to me previously, this is also, it's in the Monpont Pond watershed. It's also in the Silver Lake watershed, which is an outstanding resource water. That requires additional treatment and special types of stormwater controls, which they have the appropriate things here, but I just wanted to identify that it was an outstanding resource water. And then, on the original submittal, they were seeking a waiver to not have to provide an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater system, and I recommended against granting a waiver for that. Because again, it's a gravel surface, it's gonna take a lot of maintenance to, as you mentioned, when you were out there, a couple of catch basins were full. So they have to go by that operation and maintenance plan that they did include in the revised documents. Now, what their calculations show, and the way the discussion was just going, because the site was wooded previously, that's what they have to show us that they're controlling. The stormwater that was on the site from there, prior to the clearing, they cannot increase that stormwater, or they have to control the stormwater back to how much was going off the site back then, which is why they've based their calculations on this whole area being wooded. They based that on aerial photography, Mass GIS, it's the state geographic information system. They have aerial photography. It goes back to 1995. You can look at it on Google Earth too. So that's how they estimated where the forest, where the woods were versus the gravel surfaces. And so that's how they did that. And basically, the post development is actually what you see out there today. It's the gravel surface. That's what they're trying to capture, send to these infiltration basins, and put it back into the ground on site rather than allowing it to run off site. And their calculations show that there is a reduction in both the rates and the volumes of runoff for all of the design storms, 210, 25, and 100. To get back to what Mr. Pavlik was mentioning about the 100-year storm, the 100-year storm in Halifax, the National Geographic Institute, the NOAA numbers, 7.67 inches of rain in 24 hours. That's what the 100-year storm is. So that's what that is based on. In my letter of October 3rd, I did include a third page which shows the runoff summary, both, I'm gonna call it pre-existing, because it was prior to clearing, and then proposed conditions, which is what's out there today, plus the new stormwater controls that they're gonna put out there. And you can see those numbers that, as Mr. Pavlik mentioned, there's no proposed runoff off-site during the 2 and 10-year storm. The runoff off-site during a 25 and a 100 is less than what previously ran off when the lot was wooded. So they are meeting those requirements. Mr. Diaz, your numbers were pretty much right on with the woods and the gravel, because I have those summarized here as well. So they went from 93,000 square feet of woods down to the 9,000 that you mentioned. But that also turned into gravel surface, so that's what they're modeling it on. And to get back to Mr. Pavlik's and your comment about the gravel being essentially impervious, the curve number that Mr. Pavlik mentioned is one way to think of it is kind of the percent of water that runs off of a certain surface. So a curve number for a paved surface or roof concrete is 98. So roughly 98% of the water runs off. There's a little bit of evaporation and so forth, so that's why it's not 100. The gravel surface they're modeling with a 96, so it's almost the same as pavement. So they are modeling it the correct way, and their calculations also show that during the 100-year storm, I know that the highway surveyor had commented about the emergency overflow over there. During the 100-year storm, they still have 5 inches of freeboard before it would actually go out that overflow. The ponding level in that basin is 4/10 of a foot below the elevation of that overflow. So it would actually hold the 100-year storm. The flow that's getting out to Home Street during a 100-year storm is basically what they're not able to capture. Some of it's going to run off, and I think that was one of your points as well, Mr. Diaz. So, but that's my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. No, hold on. All right, I do have some, but does any board members have any questions of that?
I don't.
I do, and this is, and I know you guys work from standards, and you've kind of satisfied my question that the calculations are based on that impervious surface. And even if it was 98% and 96%, they have what's called a QPAC there, that it's probably closer to 98%. It's gonna run off before it's gonna penetrate. Getting off of that, they're proposing 2 catch basins. Now, if you don't mind moving that down a little bit, Pat. I don't know how that works.
Try this.
If you look at the contours, somewhere where there's some writing there about the arborvitaes, no, just go over to your, right there.
Yep.
If you look at the contours in there, everything is sloping on the northerly side. Everything is sloping. That's going to go to that small basin out front, which is not designed to intercept. So I think there's a 75 contour. Now you got a 77 contour, 76 contour, and as it goes towards the building, there's a 75 contour. So based on your experience, where the row of arborvitaes are, where is that stormwater going to run to?
So the contours, based on what's shown here for the contours, it's directing it this way from the property line. So basically, the majority of the runoff from back here, there might be a little bit back here that could escape that way, but for the most part, it's all going toward probably these 2 catch basins here first.
Well, where the writing is, there's a flat 77 contour through there. You've got a 70. So you got a 75 contour. But you got the catch basin at the corner of the building. And I'm gonna say that you got probably 80 to 90 feet from that catch basin to the property line. One of my concerns is that where the tree line starts, you could, in a 10-year storm, that effluent could go beyond there and it would have no place to go other than around the building. You know, unless it showed a proposed contour of, let's say 75 or 76 going from that parking area over to direct it towards the basin, I see it going around the building.
I'll have to look in my file, but I believe, I mean, the way that these contours are shown here, it is going this way from here. So it's gonna either hit the building, it's gonna get captured in these or captured in those two. From this point, yeah, there's gonna be some that goes that way, and that's shown in there, if you look at the drainage area, the watershed plans that they've prepared. That is shown with some of that going toward that basin.
But there's nothing in that basin to catch it. There's no catch basin going into that basin. That's just roof drains. Is there a
Right,
catch basin?
Well, it's graded toward that basin, so overland flow will get into that basin.
Common sense wise, should there be a basin on the north side of that to capture any potential runoff on the northerly side of that building? It doesn't appear to me that there's enough basins in the rear of that property to capture. And obviously, there hasn't been because those basins immediately filled up and it cascaded over to Route 36. So, common sense wise, I know you guys are science guys. Common sense wise, where that area is so long, should there be a basement somewhere near the edge of that parking area to assure that no water is going to go through there? Because if it doesn't go into the original basin on the northerly side, it's going to go around the building and back over to here.
Yeah, it'll end up in this basin eventually.
Correct.
Because it'll go around.
But there's nothing to intercept it to go into that smaller basin up top.
Yeah, just the grading around here, because this is your 74 contour, it goes around like this. And then your basin's at 73, so it's, that whole area is draining into that basin at that location.
And I'm going to say these are existing grades, Mr. Pavlik, right? These are existing?
It's, the majority of the site is existing contours. What we're referring to is the proposed infiltration basins. So
Yeah, I don't see any proposed elevations on it. I just see existing elevations.
Yeah, it's the only proposed contours are what you see.
Correct. Yeah, everything else is existing.
Yeah,
So are we gonna rely on existing conditions to make sure that works? My only concern is to make sure that we capture
yeah.
all of the stormwater from that whole back area. 2 basins doesn't seem sufficient, but you guys have done the math.
Yeah, I guess one question. This area out here, is that gonna be gravel, or is that gonna be grass?
it's existing gravel to remove.
I mean, they could either grade out a swale to go through there to make sure it gets into that basin, or they could install a catch basin, either way. One of the other things that they could do is when they plant these arborvitaes, is plant them on a little bit of a mound so that it blocks any water from going in that direction.
Yeah, arborvitaes, you got parking and stuff in there, so I don't see the arborvitaes getting any closer to that parking area.
Yeah, no, but I mean, just right along the row of arborvitaes, you can have them mounded up a little bit, so that nothing can get past the arborvitaes in a northerly direction.
Okay. Ma'am, you had one question. Is it more of a technical question?
Well, I was just gonna ask,
If you don't mind getting up and identifying yourself.
Barbara Kolcheski from 50 Aldana Road. So my question is that a lot of those trees that were cut down in the back are abutting our property, right? We're all the way back down here. So it was just, my question was if some of those, would this be less difficult if some of those trees were left to absorb the water runoff?
Yes, because obviously when it was treed, it absorbed a lot more of the water.
Right.
So your
And it
wood,
blocked my breeze
Yeah,
and
so-
wind tunnels and, yeah.
so
Yeah,
just,
let him finish.
just so that you know, so when I was talking about the percentage of runoff,
Yes,
the runoff from, in sandy soils, which part of the site is sandy soils, it's mapped, it's called hydrologic soil group A.
mhm,
The percent runoff from the woods versus the gravel, it's a 30. The number's 30 for the woods versus the 96 for the gravel.
yeah.
So that's what their pre-development, I'm calling it now.
Yeah, okay.
Conditions were based on, was the wooded area.
That's too bad, because if they had known this, right, then we, as property abutters, wouldn't have like a wind tunnel now coming directly from those northeast storms coming through our property because a lot of the trees are gone.
Mhm.
So what's happening is that a lot of the weaker trees, or younger trees, coming up are being blown over.
Impacted.
Because the mature trees were all cut down through that property. So which leaves like a gaping hole for everyone, you know? So that was it.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have anything for Mr. Brennan? He's our review engineer. His job is to make sure that the calculation's correct, so if he's got something specific.
Bill
Question.
Polchewski, 50 Aldana Road. A question on the arboretum trees there. Why are there only trees on that northeast side
is that,
of the property?
if you don't mind.
Okay, let me see if I can get that answer for you. Who wants to answer that? Okay.
So,
Just-
hi. So the trees are proposed not in conjunction with the stormwater management application at all. The trees were proposed, this is the same plan that is for site plan review, and the trees were proposed because one of the abutters to that direction requested that there be trees.
Okay, now how do I request trees to abut my property, which is the east side, the square part, right there, that whole 139 feet is my property. There's a fence up there right now, and I'm looking at trucks, boats, junk.
Let me see if I can get an answer for you. Just Pat, hold on 1 second.
But, I mean, that will help stop the erosion, of water also into my property, even though you say the northerly side's getting trees, but it's sloped towards the west, the land.
Okay, I'm just gonna answer just quickly. I mean, based on the topography, and I can only go by the plan shows, is that your property is a lot higher than their property. But let me see if I can get some sort of answer, because there's been some questions as to what the use of that parking area is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you were at a watershed conservation meeting, but
Mhm.
it's a sound area, the train, we hear the train more, the ground shakes more with all the tree removal, all the roots and all that. So we're feeling it on my property there. I can hear the trains more, I can feel the house shake more now because there's less, trees to grab.
Mhm.
The soil, I mean,
And
getting
then-
cracks in my fireplace, I mean, there's just a bunch of little things.
Okay.
I just had a water line replaced, and I'd say nothing to do with that, but
Okay, well, let me see if I can get an answer.
I'm just thinking the shaking of the neighborhood,
Yeah, the
lack of trees.
shaking the neighborhood. Let me see if I can get an answer. The main things is
And I believe the trees were removed in 2020?
2020.
20, in December.
Okay, I knew it was 2020, correct.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those trees were removed prior to the implementation of the
Yeah.
bylaw that we are currently working on. We did have a bylaw in 2019, but it was more the MS4 for the municipalities.
Was there supposed to be any notification to the abutters of any of these tree removals?
Um,
I mean, we just moved there, we just purchased the house in 2020, and my neighbor's here 2019, so we're fairly new.
Yeah.
But since we've lived there, we never got any notification for any permitting or any type of work there. We're not sure if we were supposed to be notified. or any hearings.
I can just tell you from experience that it appears that no permits were applied for, but I don't know what permits would have been required. If it was a gravel removal permit, which that appears to be what happened, or topsoils, then a permit should have been applied for. Then this should have been addressed at a hearing in front of the Board of Selectmen. But I'm not sure.
Okay, me neither. Now, on the aerial view of the mass, you say the mass aerial view, I looked at that online, and I looked at Redfin, Zillow. It seems to me that my property line, that they took trees and went into my property through that site. If you go on that site and look at
Zach,
50 Aldana, I got a picture of it, Redfin, I don't know how accurate they are from satellite.
Yeah, that's the assessor's parcel maps that are used by Mass GIS. So it's not, they're not that accurate. They're
Okay.
not survey grade accuracy for
Okay.
sure.
I want to address that.
I just want to point out, I did bring that to Mr. Pavlik's attention, that there was an abutter, I didn't know it was you, that based on the aerial photography in the map that assessors have, that there appeared to be an encroachment. Unfortunately, that's nothing we can deal with, but if you feel there's an encroachment, then they would have to, replace the trees. But we don't know. I don't know. I didn't walk that portion of the property. I don't believe there's any staking out there. I think they use their, whatever information you use to get your survey. I don't know that you, there's nothing on the plan that indicates you put any bounds or stakes in.
Yep.
So, but,
I don't know if there's any-
Yeah, the property line there's a fence surrounding much of the site. And
Yeah,
that is more or less pretty close to the
Yeah.
actual property line.
That's,
So I know the
That's right.
the GIS mapping that you're referring to.
looks
as
different.
Mr. Brennan indicated, it's not an
Okay.
accurate depiction. This is survey quality.
An actual field.
so on the ground survey.
Yes.
Yeah,
And they actually show that there's a stake and attack at that corner right there.
that one.
So you could probably find that if you go out there.
Mr. Pavlik, is there a stake in attack?
There was at one point, if it's still there, the wood can rot, but there wasn't.
Okay, that-
Well, it wouldn't have rotted in the last, you've been doing this for the last year or so, right? I
Pressure
don't,
treated?
no.
Plastic?
Usually oak stakes, but
Oh.
yes.
No,
It
you're
should
more
still
than,
be there.
yeah, you're more than welcome to go out there and take a look to see if it's,
Okay.
if it's
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Okay, so with the trees, it would just, we're here for the water runoff, basically, but how do I address trying to get some kind of
Trees put up.
blockage of their property, so I don't have to look at their trucks or vehicles or something?
Well, let me ask this question, Attorney, Counsel, I saw somewhere that they do not intend to use that rear portion.
Yeah, so the site plan.
Once you, if you don't mind.
The site plan approval for the site, is for the interior of the building. There is some exterior storage around it, but it's not really contemplated that there's gonna be anything going on back there for this particular use. The hours of operation are limited in the site plan approval. It's not an ongoing 24-hour operation. There's only
Okay.
2
Let's just,
employees on
Yeah.
the property. It's not an intensive use that's being proposed.
okay, the vehicles, and I did see some vehicles back there, are those vehicles planned on being moved out of there?
The proposal that we went to site plan review for is for a tenant for the property, a tenant to come in and use the property for this use, not the property owner. So to the extent that those vehicles are part of the property owners, they'll be removed. And in fact, that's one of the requirements in the site plan review, that the current use stop when the new tenant comes in.
Okay. You have any indication what the intent, is that area going to be left vacant?
I don't believe, it's one, person and an employee. I don't think they have an intention to utilize that area.
I don't know if that,
Thought they should have left some trees up there then,
um,
they weren't intent on using it.
yeah, I don't know, I don't know what they intended originally, and
Yeah,
now
same
this,
here.
this is a new application they've submitted,
Okay. Well,
that's been vetted. Is there anybody else that's got any questions for our engineer, and then I'm gonna take comments from,
No, I'll just say, just because I'm not
Okay.
sure.
yeah, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Adam Lincoln at 44 Eldona, so I go up on the south side there along Bill and Barbara. You said that his property is higher than the lot. Is ours, I feel like when I look out my window, I'm looking up at the property. Is there a downgrade to us? I don't know how to read the map. For that said, if you're putting trees up.
It says it goes up as it goes into
There's a high,
Okay.
89 to 90.
there's a high point back here by the corner, and then it drops off back onto your property.
Do you mind just showing us, Pat, just show him where this gentleman's property is, which is to the rear.
Yeah, he's,
You're right there.
yeah,
The house sits right down on the.
yeah, so
south corner.
there's a high point right here, and it drops off onto his property. So the high point is basically right on the property line, it's probably, the fence is probably right on that high point. The fence running down that side.
Yeah, and I can see like the trucks and the boats sitting there in the property from my back window.
Okay, but I believe, and I do have the site plan, and doesn't say, but I believe that the intended use, or whatever the proposed use is going to be, that those vehicles should be removed.
I understand, but then the question is, if you can ask for trees, can
Okay.
we ask for trees based on?
Okay, why don't you come back here so that we can catch your voice?
So then the request is, can we add trees added to ours if we're indeed a lower elevation?
Okay, that's strictly up to the applicant. Unfortunately, our purview is whatever falls out of the sky doesn't go out onto Route 36.
I understand.
It's contained to the site. And that's basically it in a nutshell. They've offered the row of arborvitae's. If we've got lots of concerns, then we can only ask them to maybe come up with a plan so that you don't have to see any cars. But it seems to me that it's more than the cars. You know, you've got the potential dust, you know, the wind, you know, we can't help you with the wind, the trees are gone. If there's no intent to park anything there, I mean, would it be an advantage for them? And I guess I'm gonna direct this more to Pat. If, on your percentages, you're looking at 98 and 96. If that was a grass surface, how much does that change?
It's 39.
Yeah. Okay, for the audience, basically, they use certain numbers to calculate how much runoff. So if that complete area was grassed in, their numbers would be almost 50% less. It's 50% less potential effluent coming out into the gravel area.
I mean, when you really look at it, the cheaper of
No,
the two.
okay. Yeah, you get, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, yeah. See, we have remote people that do the minutes, so they gotta be on there.
Well, wouldn't you think
Okay,
some
just
trees?
identify yourself again.
Bill Polcheski, 50 Aldana Road. You think trees would also, with the grass, absorb some of the runoff? What numbers would that bring? Another row of trees. I mean, I don't know what you calculated, how many trees are there, but how far apart.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just continue that down? So, I mean, my concern is, your concern is the water, mine is kind of like the sound, in which they cut down all these trees, which I think was kind of unnecessary, but, for all that land, but it just opened everything up for, you know, sound, the wind. You can't do much about the wind. And we all saw it today, it was blowing pretty strong out of the northwest, and that's where it comes from. And it's been wiping out my trees. I've lost, since 2020, at least a half a dozen trees. I mean, it's great, I got some oak out of it, but, I'm out there cutting, you know, and now I get some of the small stuff is falling down, and some of it's falling into the MBTA tracks.
Yep.
That's a big tree. There's one new one. I have a picture of it. It's a big one. I don't know who clears that, you know, obviously the state. But that's something to be concerned too, because they're pushing them over. They're pushing them over into the tracks. And if you look down the tracks, you'll see a big pile right at that corner of the northeast corner. There's a pile of trees that keep getting blown down since the last 4 years. So that's something we should look at, but, yeah, I'd like to see some trees expanded all around the property, you know, down to the, east side and to the south corner. I don't understand why also, I look at the lot, and there's 3 single trees in the southeast corner. There's 3 trees left. They cleared out how many acres? And there's 3 trees left inside that fence, in that corner, southeast corner. What was the purpose of that? Why leave just 3?
We don't know. The applicant, yeah, I have no idea. Okay,
Okay,
just,
I mean-
I got one other question for Pat, but I think I know the answer. I mean, even if you planted a half a dozen trees in there, I think the amount of moisture that the trees are going to take from the soil is not gonna be anywhere near having that area grass to prevent the runoff. Our problem is we need to prevent the runoff. Trees aren't gonna
More
help
grass.
prevent, I don't, unless I'm wrong, I know what,
In his,
It can help.
in his post-development conditions, those trees aren't even considered in the
correct, yes,
calculations.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's more aesthetics, that's got nothing to do with the drainage.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, but if they're gonna go there, then that'll help everyone else, so all the butters. We are neighbors.
All right, is there anybody else that's got any comments? Yes, okay,
Okay, go on.
It's just,
just identify yourself for the record, please.
Rick Murray, 301 Hall Street. You have a piece of industrial zone property, commercial. Can you, before it goes to any planning boards or any designs, can you go put leaching basins in the property on your own and then just add them to a plan down the road and use them on that plan? So anybody can do that. It's like they kind of set a precedent here, where they went and put these 3 leaching basins in that are all silted up and full now, that should never did anything anyway. And then they had all the trouble with the drainage, and so then planning comes along and adds them to the plan, which they were never designed, never approved, never inspected. And now they're junk, but they still get to use them on the plan. Doesn't make any sense.
I
You
agree,
know what I mean?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's been my bone of contention since day one, but they just keep ignoring me and they just keep using them.
Okay.
And I don't see like I said, they just went out, I watched them do it. They went and put them in on their own, and they made no sense where they were anyway. The one in the back of the building, to the north side, that's totally impervious material over there. That thing doesn't do anything. I've seen the water come around that building like you could float a canoe down it.
And does it come around the right-hand side, which I just showed him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it comes around that side. I mean, that's what,
You know, I've seen probably close to 100-year storm one time. I sat in the front and watched, and there's a river ran around that building. The town's catch basin out front, the water's jumping up over it this high. It was unbelievable. In fact, it used to, flood the neighbor out on the south side there at one time. I think they did a little berm to stop that. But I'm surprised to see these basins will actually handle the water I've seen come off that property.
Okay.
It's incredible.
again, that's my concern. To answer your question, I would say that whether it was 2019 or 2012, anything that was done on the industrial property would require some sort of a permit.
Yeah, there was no previous site plan
no,
approval that showed them right.
And I've noticed from meeting minutes and other stuff that there's been sort of a history of non-compliance, and I mentioned that. So, unfortunately, it's not much that we can do. We can't make them put the trees back. We know that there's some.
I feel bad for these people. I mean,
Correct.
when they cleared those trees, all of a sudden, boy, I get neighbors. I can see the houses, and I just felt so bad for them. Just the noise from the train. Wouldn't believe how much that impacted them.
Oh, I
know,
I
And
do.
just running that big vibratory compactor there for weeks, I'm sure it didn't do their property much good either.
Okay.
Their pool.
Ma'am, okay. Ma'am, unfortunately, we got to get on. Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Is there anything else for Mr. Brennan? Okay, anybody from the board?
Are these catch basins gonna be obviously fixed so they can handle it properly?
Pavlik, I mean, that's one bone of my contention, but I want to clarify something, Rick, if you don't mind. You saw them putting in this, are these solid, are these catch basins or are they leaching
They're
basins?
leaching basins. That was my understanding, leaching catch
Well,
basins.
they're not leaching very good now because it's full of silt.
Okay, well, I can tell you right off the bat, our regulations require basins. It's gonna have to be a solid basin. Am I correct?
I'll have to look and see.
Yeah, then it's got to be a solid basin. You know, we can't allow you to put a leaching basin in there based on, your stormwater management, because you're gonna have to do calcs on the bottom of those basins. Because you're gonna have to be 2 feet above groundwater, you know, so if you do attempt to use those basins, if they're leaching, you're not gonna be able to, because the purpose of a deep sunk basin is to get all the sediment in for that to settle out. And that's not gonna happen in a leaching basin, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay,
So
so,
this,
so we'll work on the basin, but go ahead.
okay, so, we're open to discussions like that, but, with the intent of this design, based on the minor stormwater permit regulation, this is, what we came up with to make use of those existing catch basins. So there's less stringent requirements under the minor stormwater permit requirements versus the,
You're correct.
yeah.
I don't agree with that 100% because I think the disturbance area is a lot greater. But unfortunately, for the amount of area that you're disturbing now, you do fall under. You know, we've calculated how much material is coming out and so forth and so on. But I think you've heard the comments. I don't know that you want the ability to address some of them comments.
I don't know that we're ready to address them tonight, but.
Well, I'm sure you're not. We're not ready to close the hearing tonight. We're here on fact finding. We wanted to hear from the neighbors. You've heard from them. You know, and I'm gonna agree, when you cut all the trees down, living near the tracks, I mean, those trees absorb the noise, you know, and when the leaves are gone, your windows are down, so, you know, should it have been permitted originally? I would say yes, and they didn't. But you know, we don't have the authority to go back and say plant any trees, and we can't tell you to plant any fences, or fix any fences, but, I think the general consensus is that if that area was grass versus, gravel, it might be a little more palatable, and I think it would be 100% better, and you would not get any runoff onto Holmes Street. And I think based on the highway surveyors, whether it's the 100-year storm or the 1,000-year storm, he doesn't want any water going on 36. So I don't know how you want to address that. If you want to bury basins or if you want to put them in there, you know, I think part of stormwater management says, and I agree that there'll be no more runoff when you started. In this particular case, we know that there was no runoff years ago or before they cleared the trees. And it's obvious that town does not want that particular overflow to go into Route 36, no matter what storm it is. So, Council.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say, you know, this is the proposal that we're submitting. I don't think my client is gonna be willing to redesign this to include grass in that particular area, but I can discuss it with him. I can't say whether or not it's feasible to design a basin that will withstand a 100-year storm event. I'm not an engineer, but I don't know if that's something that is ever required in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a standard, because a 100-year storm is so remarkable and the design would be so complicated. This is what we're proposing as an attempt to solve this problem. And if it becomes too onerous to try and design a system to solve the problem, then my client loses the tenant, we don't exercise the site plan review, and we leave the site the way it is. We're making a good faith attempt to design something that will address the complaints that were made about the stormwater runoff. But I will discuss the grass with him. I don't think he's going to be interested in doing that.
I don't think we're looking for a complete redesign. I mean, the size of the basin is enormous, okay? I'm comfortable that you're going to capture most of that water. I'm not comfortable with the amount of basins that you have, and I'm not comfortable with the fact that it's overflowing on Route 36. So to me, that's a minor adjustment. I don't know, and Pat, maybe you can help us with this, on a 100-year storm, what would be the impact if that overflow either wasn't there? What's the impact?
There shouldn't be any, because like I mentioned before, the flood elevation in that basin during the 100-year storm was below that outlet.
Correct.
It's 5 inches below it,
So-
so it shouldn't go out that outlet.
Okay, so if that's eliminated, that's one problem that we don't have. Now, I don't know, under your design criteria, is that required? Maybe, Mr. Palver, you can answer that. You're the designer. Is there a requirement that you have that overflow going out into our MS4 system?
It's a simple matter of gravity. Home Street is at the lowest part of the site, so
Okay.
topography is such that, the
Yeah, but-
slope is like that, and
Okay,
it's
but
it's
my-
running off to Home Street.
Okay, but my question is this, when you look at the overflow, when you look at the elevations, there's a 1 foot difference between the tops of the basins that are surrounded and the overflow. So if you raise that 1 foot, that means nothing goes out into Route 36. Correct?
He's asking that you eliminate the emergency overflow.
Right, you eliminate that.
I'd have to take another look at that, but
Okay, I mean, I don't know if there's anything in your mathematical standards that require you have an overflow. I mean, to me, that's one,
It's a typical,
practice.
it's a typical thing, but you could get rid of the riprap, bring it up to the same elevation, then if it ever overflowed, it'd just be that whole berm would overflow, it wouldn't be channelized, it would
correct.
go over the berm. So, I don't see an issue with eliminating that, if that's what the board and the highway surveyor wants. Just make it grass and keep it at the same elevation as the rest of the basin, the top.
So that might be one issue. I mean, I do understand that from your driveway area, you do have a hump there, potentially on a 10-year storm, which we get quite frequently, as we discussed, you might have a little overflow. I don't think that's the problem. As he indicated, that water was coming out of the basins 2 feet higher. You know, there was just that much water coming out with no place to go. It was jumping out of the basins. And this is all after they did that. So if we eliminate that, and you did plant some grass or create something, so all of that impervious surface isn't heading out front,
I'm not sure what you're talking.
okay. What I'm saying is, you got all that gravel back there. And what the gentleman asked was, trees, I mean, that's beyond, trees we can't discuss. It's not part of the process. But if that area was grassed, it absorbs a lot of the water. And that would almost guarantee nothing ever coming out onto Route 36 again. That with maybe moving some of them basins a little further north to catch anything that went around that. I mean, he just indicated that he's seen water going around there. Now, maybe that basin was there and it was just full and wouldn't catch it. That I don't know. I mean, to me, those are kind of minor improvements. If you move the basin over, if you put an additional basin in, so now we've got 3 basins instead of 2 to catch all this water. Because if you're dealing with pavement, it's a little easier.
Are you saying catch basins or?
Catch basins.
Okay.
You know, and they gotta be decent catch basins. Am I right, Pat?
Yeah, I was gonna check into that.
Yeah, okay. The only question is, Pat, is in that scenario, could those 2 basins be piped? Because typically in order to get your TSSs out, it has to be a deep sump basin going directly into that
Into the forebay,
forebay.
which they're piped separately into the forebay.
Correct. But if he added a basin, and it went from one basin to the other, it really shouldn't affect the calcs anymore.
It's not gonna affect the calcs, but like I said in the beginning, it's not good practice to do that, because the second catch basin that it's flowing into, when the flow is coming into it, it can resuspend the.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you'd have another basin there. You relocate the basins that are there, because it sounds to me like they're not gonna be any good for you if they're leaching basins. And you add an additional basin in there and pipe that and plant some grass. to me, that kind of solves a big problem, but, you know. Mr. Gaynor, up to the mic, please.
Bert Gaynor, 17 Pemmican Way. I believe if you look in the file on the, it will show that the applicant has already agreed to quote-unquote do whatever it takes. In the June of 2021, one of the conditions was if there was any problem with runoffs or anything, the applicant will come before the board and do whatever it takes to remedy a runoff situation. So I think it was kind of clear in the conditions that they approved, it's signed by Mr. Gordon Andrews. I think
I
it's
have.
condition number 2,
Mhm.
that he's already agreed to come back to the site and do whatever it takes should there be a water runoff problem. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Counselor, did you see the decision on June 24th, 2021? That's the decision he's referring to? That's, you've seen that? That's the original one that, based on the information that we've received, that there was nothing on this particular site plan approval that was done. Nothing, they didn't do anything.
I mean, I think that is the site plan approval that allows the current use of the property, and that site plan shows this entire gravel yard as the gravel yard. That's what I'm familiar with. I mean, to the extent that the applicant, who was not represented by me at that time, said they would do whatever it takes. I mean, we are here with an application for a stormwater management permit to address this situation that has been reviewed by the commission's review engineer. And we have designed something that will result in there being less water runoff to Home Street than there was before any activity occurred on the property.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, we are making an attempt to solve that problem.
Okay. The only thing I just want to comment on that, and I understand, and I've looked at the numbers, and I know the philosophy, and you need to, with stormwater management, you need to make sure that no additional runoff, that there's no additional runoff from originally to what you're proposing. These circumstances, I think, are different. I mean, we've got a major problem here, and it's been a problem for those neighbors. So I think we're gonna have to step out of the lane and come up with a plan to make sure no more water comes out on 36. And I think that would be the goal of the commission. I don't wanna speak for everybody, but, so I wanna try to keep this around an hour. It looks like we've got all the comments. That's okay. Is there any other board comments at this point? Or any questions they have for either the attorney, counsel, or Pat?
Mr. Dean?
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify,
yeah.
was I correct in saying, is
Absolutely,
it says
yeah.
on one of the conditions that they...
They say-
So that would probably include grass and trees if in fact, whatever it takes to
Correct.
handle
It's just not clear from this, and as Counselor indicated, she didn't represent him at the time, so she can't represent what the intent was back then. It appears to me that someone
it.
had...
was Mr. Liddell, who was the one that said that.
Okay,
I don't know his first
Okay.
name, but it was Mr. Liddell himself.
I don't believe Gary Liddell has ever been to a meeting, but I could be.
okay, so, I think you've heard from the audience, so I guess it's gonna be your call as to how you wanna proceed. We know that there's going to be some changes to the plan. You've got a copy of that. We're gonna need the soil logs on the plan. If you intend to use those basins, you're gonna have to ask for a waiver from our regulations, because we do require that they be inspected and prior to installation. So you decide what you wanna do. You wanna try to move forward and go for a vote, or do you wanna continue this and talk to your client to see how we can come up with some sort of resolution that, you know, these people aren't flooded again? You know, we can't talk about trees, that's beyond our power. It's your pleasure, Counselor.
So I think that we do need to discuss with Mr. Brennan the issue of the catch basins to make sure that we have adequately addressed that and that it's not gonna be a problem. So we wouldn't like to ask for a vote tonight. We could
Okay.
discuss that with him and make any revisions. We could make the revisions that we indicated we would make in the letter from Mr. Pavlik as well.
Okay, good. You're requesting continuance to our next meeting, which I think is November 26th. Is it November 26th?
Yes.
Okay. Is that your pleasure, Counselor? I'm sorry.
It's actually 2 weeks, I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah, we meet every 2 weeks. Do you need more time?
We can probably-
I mean, I don't know with Pat if it was me inspecting the basins, you'd be out there with a machine digging them up. So, we know they're full, you have to get a vac truck, but, if Mr. Murray says that they're leaching basins, then I'm gonna believe that they're leaching basins, which means that they're not gonna work for.
You're gonna require us all.
We have to, we have to because we require a deep sump basin, and that's how we get the total suspended solids out. Am I correct, Pat? So we can't allow a basin, a leaching basin, in lieu of that. So, or the other alternative, if you determine that they aren't leaching basins, and you want to certify them, and you want to ask for a waiver, then, but you'd have to certify them, so. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Jake Okerfeld, 301 Home Street. I actually have photographs of the basin they installed. And I don't think we should be going on, I don't think so. So you-
Yeah, well, no, I can tell you, and I addressed that to, thank you, I addressed that to them on the site plan, that, and he discussed whether or not they could vac them, and that's up to them, but we do need some sort of certification that they are decent basins, if that's the case.
And just a question, just because I'm not familiar with it, but now that there's going to be revisions done to the site plan itself, the original site plan that was brought forward to the planning board, now there's going to be changes to it. Is that going to have to get refiled and reviewed from the planning board with like the watershed on there and everything?
I would say yes. I think as a courtesy that when we get to a point that we're ready to make a decision on this, all right, as I stated in the last order of conditions, we are going to approve a plan that's dated such and such, such and such, all right? That plan obviously is not what was in front of the planning board. So it's going to be incumbent upon the applicant, because he's not going to have an approval for that plan from the planning board. So I would say yes.
Okay, so even though the original site plan was approved with the contingency that conservation was okay with it, now there's changes being done to this plan, it's gonna have to be refiled.
In my opinion, the changes are significant enough for us to defer to the board, to that planning board. If the planning board reviews the plan and said, look these are strictly drainage, structures that were moved around, there's no change in lighting, there's no change in parking, there's no change in the use in the building, then that's the planning board's decision whether or not they want to hold a new hearing or just say, okay, we're okay with that
So
particular
would
plan.
that be the time that the other abutters would come to the planning board and address the, overall appearance and, potential
The,
plant things?
okay, the planning board, I believe, has jurisdiction over the plantings. I mean, if this was done properly and they had applied for an earth removal permit, there's buffer zones that are required, okay, and there are none. So we just got all this non-compliance, and I honestly don't know how to fix it. If the planning board says, well, look we've heard from the abutters and the wind and the noise and the dust, and they want to address that, I think they can under site plan. We can only address the drainage portion of it, and maybe the grass. I can't have anybody plant trees. Maybe move the basins around and make sure we capture everything. But yeah, we would defer that. I would suggest that this would go back to the board and let them review it to see if the changes are substantial. And I don't know, I think in their minutes they indicate that. I don't know if it's on their orders. But no, it is. I don't think it is on the orders, but they're going to be on all of our orders.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Counselor, you want to request a continuance?
Yes, we'll take the continuance for the 2 weeks.
Okay, I am looking for, oh, wait a minute, anybody got any other comments? Caitlin, any other questions? Okay, I got a motion in front of me to continue 258 Holmes Street to November 26.
I put a motion that we continue 285 Home Street to November 26th.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we'll have a vote. Aye, it's unanimous. Okay. Feel free to contact us, contact the office. You can, Caitlin and I will go over the plan, whatever you got for revisions, so that everybody knows when we get here. I prefer it, everybody knows what we're doing when we get here. And then if there's any other plans, any abutters that want to be notified or come in and review the plan, obviously, we'll give them the opportunity.
Okay, I was just curious when we would need to submit in order to have Mr. Brennan do this.
I'll turn it around right away.
Yeah.
Try to get something in the week of the next meeting.
Okay. You know, and if you get an idea as to what you want to do, just, you know, let the office know. You know, I'm in touch with Pat, and if it looks like it's patable, then, you know, we'll let people know, and hopefully we can get it resolved. Okay? Thank you so much. Tell you what, I lose agendas. Thank you. I lose agendas. Just gonna let it clear.
Yeah.
Britt, thank you. Mrs. Alger, you are not on my agenda. I do not know why. We missed that.
Jeez, I thought it was mandatory.
You had nothing better to do to come and see us tonight. Okay. So all we're waiting for now is the 10-year rain that we just talked about. Yeah, once we get the 10-year rain, we'll know if we accomplished that thing. And
It looks lovely.
okay, good. I mean, Steve spent a lot of time out there with what we need to do to get that water to go here. That obviously with machinery and equipment. But there was a lot of eyes out there, so I think we're going to be in good shape.
Right, there's a lot of eyes.
Okay, and I'm not ready to.
Hard work too.
Okay.
The guys that did it
Good.
did a great job.
Okay, good. So next rain, you know where I'm going. I'm going to Duncan's and I'm going to the other place. I'm not buying anything, but so okay. Our next order of business is going to be 596 Montponset Street, and that is a request for a partial certificate of compliance. The situation is that the owner has he got an original certificate of compliance. I don't know, something happened, he got a yearly extension, and that has expired. So what I'm asking the board to do is to give him a partial certificate of compliance, because the balance of the work is somewhere between 80 and 90 feet from the wetlands area. The agent went out, okay, did an inspection based on our regulations, and I'll let her say if there's anything that she saw or recommends or doesn't recommend.
Sure. So I went out to 596 Montponset Street on October 29th to meet the requirements for a partial COC. And a full COC is not yet obtainable, as the leaching field still needs to be installed. When I went out there, the water department was also there, and they were looking for the old water lines that used to serve the neighboring building. And those need to come out before the leaching field is installed. And an update on that is they did find it and removed it. And when I went out there, there was nothing of concern when I was there. So no notes of concern on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
For having said that, I'd be looking for a motion to approve a partial certificate of compliance for 596 Montponset Street. We do need the folder.
Gotcha.
I put a motion that we give a partial certificate of compliance request for 596 Rapunzel Street.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. Let's get that. Hopefully that's going to be this. I'm not even taking it in the past. We can- Okay, our next order of business is 314 Plymouth Street. 314 Plymouth Street is the old farm stand, the red building, and we got reports of material being dumped there. We did send out letters to the former owners and the current owners, and we did send one to the engineers. We did get one response. We haven't gotten anything back. It's my suggestion that we wait 10 days from the time it was mailed, and then we issue an enforcement order for them to clean up the site. We've determined from a couple of different plans, the most frequent plan that it's questionable as to the location of the material. One plan shows it's within the 100-foot. The other plan shows it's not within the 100-foot. But based on the fact that they did have a notice of intent that is expired, that the entire parcel would be covered. So what I'm asking is that we wait a full 10 days, and then we'll generate an enforcement order to see if we can generate some activity so that they're not dumping that material in the center of town. And they probably should ask for a vote for that. And if you want, I'll make the motion. Then the motion would be that we're going to wait 10 days on 314 Plymouth Street. If we have no response, we're going to proceed with enforcement action.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 359 Plymouth Street is a similar situation. We have put a notice into the owner that for some reason they're dumping concrete in that area, and piles of debris. Again, I think we should wait the 10 days. I want to point out, though, that before we do any enforcement action, we will follow the procedures, which means that we'll send them a certified mail, see if there's a response, and then go into the enforcement part of it. So again, I'd be looking for a motion that we continue with enforcement action on 359 Plymouth Street.
That says like send a letter. Put a motion.
Yeah, we've sent a letter, and we'll carry the same process. Oh, you got pictures of it? Okay. Okay, yeah, you can see the rocks and the concrete.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll start the same process. You know, my thoughts are, let's try to do it with letters, and you know, the enforcement part of it is the last thing that we want to do. So we have a motion and a second. Did I go for a vote?
I'll second that motion.
You second, okay.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye, unanimous. Okay. Next order of business, a few weeks ago, our last meeting, in your package, you had the Halifax Code of Conduct. Basically, it's for all appointed officials in town. It makes sense. It was in your folder. I've got a chance to review it. The town administrator suggested that we adopt that policy as a board. So if the board's comfortable, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the Halifax Code of Conduct policy for the Conservation Commission.
Put a motion that we accept the code of conduct policy.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Go to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. The next item on our agenda is 17 Lake Street. This is the one that I added. 17 Lake Street, Halifax is a certificate of compliance. It appeared that the septic system was installed a number of years ago, and a certificate of compliance was not filed for. There is a real estate closing that it's impacting. That's why I put it on the agenda. I'm going to sort of defer this to Caitlin. We had to do an inspection, so Caitlin?
Yep, so I went out to 17 Lake Street this morning to conduct a site visit. And I didn't note anything of concern when I was out there. I looked at the plan before going out there. Septic system is installed as they planned. So yeah, I didn't really see any issues on the property.
Okay. So based on that, and just, this has become very frequent. We're getting, it seems like we're getting one every 6 or 7 weeks with these. So I'd be looking for a motion to sign off the certificate of compliance for 17 Lake Street.
I put a motion that we accept certificate of compliance for 27,
17,
oh, 17.
17 Lake Street. Okay, do I hear a second? We'll go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. Do we have that in the folder? You don't want to give it to me, because I will lose it.
17.
I know, I keep wanting to say 27.
I was looking down there.
Let me just, I'm gonna sign
I
this.
think 7 be next on the list. What a dumb physics.
Julie? Caitlin, is there a request in here for us to sign?
There should be, Peggy should. Let's see. Here's the photos.
We're supposed to file a request, maybe.
That's the request. Yeah, I did.
You can always,
Order of conditions. Yeah, I'm not seeing it here.
sometimes it's forgot to put in. We just can sign it later, no?
Yeah, they got a real estate closing, so I'll let you finish. Oop, anything else? Get out of your way. You know better than I.
Yeah, usually she put it in front.
Yeah.
So usually
put-
puts the
put it-
tape to the front.
There's,
Yeah.
there's something in the back here, though.
Let's see. Order of conditions.
Those are both orders?
Yep.
Okay, nothing in that thing?
Not that I saw.
Okay.
Just plans.
Ed, are you available tomorrow? Are you available to stop by if they need
Yeah.
it?
if I need
Okay.
to.
What I'm gonna ask you to do is get that ready, and then each one of us will stop by and sign it,
Okay,
okay?
sounds good.
I know time is of the essence, so I'm available tomorrow, so I'll come in, Paul can come in, and then you
Yeah.
can chase Ed. Okay.
Good luck finding me.
Next item on our agenda, you can see our agenda has changed a little bit. What I've added is an agent's report. Now that we have Caitlin, she can kind of fill us in on the happenings for the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll
Let's
take it
Caitlin.
away with that. So the first site visit I'm going to touch on is 27 Hillside Avenue. So on November 4th, a representative from Mass DEP forwarded a complaint to our department. They stated that the complainant indicated that their neighbor was burying mattresses, tires, furniture, etc., storing multiple vehicles and trash on the property. So protocol, I went out to do a site visit on the 4th when that was emailed to us. I also took with me Board of Health, Building Department, and Fire. And when we got on site, it didn't appear that anything had been buried. You know, obviously mattresses, furniture, those are all large objects. You'd probably be able to see, you know, those were buried. So we didn't really see any of that. However, when I was out there, I did notice from the road going into the backyard, there was excavated work. One of the residents there explained that I guess someone had fallen on the property and they wanted to make it easier to get down to the backyard. So I had just indicated to them, you know, no more excavating. If you want to do any work of that kind, you know, you got to go through us and make sure that's all right because there are mapped wetlands on the property. And I reached out to DEP to kind of close the loop on that. And that should be all set.
I just want to point out too, is when that complaint come in, I got a copy of that. And based on the materials that I saw in the yard I thought that we should have Caitlin, Building, and Board of Health go out at the same time because it appeared, it was a neighbor complaint, that if we didn't handle it all at once, then we're going to have 3 different people going out. So, and I think that worked out well, and she handled it well, so, and hopefully whoever 27 Hillside Ave was. And I want to point out too, that when you knocked on the door, they were cooperative. So I think this is an issue. If they want to do any more, they'll come in and we can deal with it on that basis.
Question, with all that, I saw a bunch of stuff everywhere in the yard. Is any of that stuff within the 100 feet of the wetlands?
From what I viewed, it does appear to be, you know, on the line or encroaching on.
Yeah, if you could, like you said, they're very cooperative, it sounds like. Maybe ask them to move it away from the wetlands.
Well, Amy, Caitlin and I discussed this. There was a previous notice of intent on the property to repair the septic system, which we didn't check to see if it was certificate of compliance, but that has ended. So one of the things that you got to kind of look at is the big picture is that yes, you have a wetlands area, and once that filing expired, when they want to do some more activity, it's kind of a gray area. DEP does not recognize the buffer zone. So if they were in the resource area, then DEP gets involved and they say you can't do that. Work within the 50 to the 100 is very questionable. It's a small lot. And in my opinion at the time, and it still remains the same, that as long as he's not in the resource area or creating any additional runoff into the resource area, I would say leave well enough alone. And then that's just my opinion.
I think
You know, I mean, it's not like
I
he's
think
got.
you had judgment on it.
Yeah, he's got 12 acres and can stay away, so. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, so that takes care of 27 Hillside. The next one I'm going to talk about, it says 265 Montponset Street. That was a clerical error. We're talking about 266 Montponset Street. So we did a pre-construction meeting, we being Chair Diaz and myself, on October 29th. And when we did the pre-construction meeting, we didn't see anything of concern. You know, they had the required DEP signage up, and appropriate siltation barriers were in place. And subsequent to the pre-construction meeting, work on the site has commenced.
Okay. Now the fun one.
It's always
Yeah.
And if we don't have any comments from the board.
No.
No,
Okay,
no, that's
gotcha.
fine.
So, 111 River Street. So on October 24th, Co-Chair Evans and Commission Member Doucette and myself completed a site visit at 111 River Street. So we met with Weston and Sampson along with the UXO technician company, VRH. And Weston and Sampson and VRH walked us around the site. And they had showed us where, you know, they were clearing paths around the wetlands so that equipment and workers can pass through without disrupting the wetland areas. Since that site visit, Chair Diaz and Member Doucette went out on 11/11, and I will have them take it away there for their update.
Okay. Just to point out, somewhere, we went out on the 11th, that week prior, I hadn't heard anything, and I checked with the office. There had been no response from Weston and Sampson, and their original, in the order of conditions and their scope of work and the safety plan, it's required that they send us or an update us as to what activity is going on. Having heard none, I did reach out to Ecosystems, which was following up, and the response was, we haven't heard from them either. So they did reach out to them, and we opted to go out there on Monday to do a site visit, myself and Mr. Doucette. They actually took us on the site where they were excavating for unexploded or ammunitions. What we did find is that, and this is not part of the scope of the work or the order of conditions, is they had heavy equipment, a screening plant, an excavator, and they were going to excavate an area that was, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 or 69 by, there was a very large area they had marked out, and you could see from the surface there was a lot of ammunition, and they wanted to excavate that. I mentioned to Ms. Jason that that was not part of the order of conditions and that she would have to amend it. I didn't feel it appropriate to shut the project down until she filed. So we asked them to put some siltation barriers around all the materials that's going to be excavated. Their plan is to excavate it, screen it, dispose of the metals, and then fill the area back in, if I'm correct. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
That's what they were gonna do.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
That was pretty much it.
Okay, they did take us right to the site. We did see some of the areas where they had excavated. We had all the transients there. It appeared that they were in one of the resource areas, but it's so hard to distinguish. That's not a wetlands as we think of it. It's more like a wet meadow. So you don't see maple trees, you just see the vegetation. So from what I understand, I haven't got any more reports. Oh, yes, we did. There was communication that came through that they can't get one of the pieces of equipment either in or out. So they want to know about putting some stone on the road. I personally didn't have a problem with that. I think I CC'd you on that, didn't I?
Yes.
So hopefully they'll get all that ammunition out, and we'll close that, but they will have to do an amended order. This RTN kind of got us confused, which this is called a release tracking number. And they filed this originally when they filed the notice of intent, but in their subsequent investigation, they found that there's potentially VOCs, which are volatile organics, gasoline or something that's potentially in the soils. So they amended their original release tracking number, and that kind of threw us off. It threw me off, and she clarified that. So we're okay with that, and we'll just wait for the reports, and then, like I said, once she's done, then we'll do an amended order of conditions, and hopefully that'll solve the Halifax part. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go bills to be paid. And unfortunately, on this particular one, I am going to do oh, wait a minute, hold on. Wasn't there one other thing? I wanted to bring to the board's attention, well, we'll do it with the bills. We've got bills to be paid, so what I'm gonna do is I want somebody to make a motion to pay WB Mason, Express Newspaper, and Pat Brennan. And I gotta recuse myself from the last one.
Okay. I put a motion that we pay bills for WB Mason, Express Newspaper, and PGM Brennan.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And I am gonna have you, if you don't mind, make a motion for me to be reimbursed. That's on, what I did was I recorded the enforcement order on Lot 11 Palmer Mill Road.
Oh, pardon me.
So I will need a motion and a second for that. But you're gonna have to make a motion.
Yeah, I
Okay.
put a motion that we reimburse Chairman Diaz for his, of $110 for Lot 11 Palmer Mill Road.
I second.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
And I abstain, just for the record that I didn't participate in it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we did a motion for everything, so I'm gonna have, Paul, I'm not gonna sign this one. We did take that off the agenda until we hear from the owner, the
Palmer Mill.
Palmer Mill. The only thing that and I gotta apologize, we should have, and I'll mention to her, we should have left the Pratt Street on here. Just kinda remind me the
Pratt
next
Street.
street, yeah,
Yeah,
we're not taking a vote or anything on Pratt Street, but just to follow up, Caitlin,
Caitlin's notes for the week.
yeah, we can do that, yeah, you can kind of explain what she found after you guys did the site visit.
Yes.
And that's just quick, because you found the difference in owners.
Yep, so we went out, I believe, let's see. What was the date we went up there? We went out to 76 Pratt Street on October 24th. And when we went out there, we noticed that brush was cleared to the brook. After we went out and did the site visit, I looked at the Mass GIS, and I found that the parcel where that cleared wetlands is 0 Pratt Street and not 76 Pratt Street. So I looked up the correct ownership to 0 Pratt Street, and I had sent an enforcement letter to the owners of 0 Pratt Street, because 76 Pratt Street has nothing to do with the clearing that occurred.
On that, so the people at the house said they did nothing with that, or was
So
Zero?
I,
kind of had to.
as I was looking at this map, I received a call from the owner of 76 Pratt, and he said, I'm a little confused. I didn't do any cutting down of anything. And I said, well, I just looked at the map. I noticed that 0 Pratt, kind of engulfs his parcel is a square inside this bigger lot of 0 Pratt Street. So I said, I'm looking into, ownership of that. I'm going to discuss with Chair Diaz. If you're saying you didn't cut anything, could you please send us a statement saying that you did not? I did not receive a statement from him. I did ask him that.
Okay.
And I said, we're going to send the enforcement order to 0 Pratt, as it is on that lot.
Was there any excavators on 76 Pratt Street?
It was there the day I went by, but
When I went out there, I was with Member Doucette. No one was out there. We just saw that it was cleared up to the brook.
so I think what we're gonna do is, again, just make sure, we leave that on the agenda and we'll wait for a response on that.
Gotcha.
What also transpired is the 0 Pratt is a house
I
that
was
used,
gonna say, where's 0 Pratt? Is that the farm?
no, it's, you remember the mailman? He's got the big bear in the front.
Oh, yeah, down the street.
Yeah,
He's on
he owns that, okay? He's since passed away. And it showed his son, and I'm terrible with names, so I can reference what he did.
Yeah.
And then when she did further research, she found that it was just sold. So we sent...
Oh, 0 Pratt Street was sold?
0 Pratt Street, which was part of something Thompson Street.
Yeah, because the Thompson Street's where the beer is.
That's where the beer is. So she did send a letter out there, so we'll just follow it up. I did receive an email from 76 Pratt, and my response was he wanted to get some information. I said, provided your phone number, and we can talk, and I never heard from him. So we will work on that one and see who did what, but I think we got some ideas. So if you make a note, have Peggy leave that on our agenda. Okay. Next, the last item on our agenda is October
Meetings.
meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to review them?
Yes.
I know that I did. Then I would be looking for a motion to approve our October 22nd meeting minutes.
I put a motion that we approve October 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes.
I'm looking for a second. I'm going to go to a vote. All in favor? Aye, unanimous. And it being approximately 8:50, 8:49, I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
I put a motion we adjourn for the evening.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, unanimous. We are adjourned. You know something?